Hello, this is the third thought video, and in this one I got 4 thoughts that I will do my best to be efficient, and we'll try to get through them together. Thought number 1, this has got to do with the internet, and I have this analogy in my mind that I call the plates of attraction, and this is essentially just about how our minds interact with the forces at play when we're in the online environment. You can think of every mind, or I think of every mind, as an individual positively charged proton that gets shot out of this little proton cannon in this straight trajectory when we enter the online world. And I'm using this proton and these negatively charged plates as a analogy with magnetism, because these are kind of invisible forces that you can't necessarily see or even feel, but they're acting on you when you're within the online environment. And it's extremely important that we understand the forces that are at play during this time, so that we can consciously direct our attention to places that we want to go, and not just places that we're kind of being manipulated to go. So when you're ejected out of this thing, you really, one fundamental thing to think about here in the online world is that it's really truly fundamentally it's a personal journey that we all go on. Maybe there's a little bit of time when you're younger, maybe some time with your parents, or especially maybe some online environment with peers where you're getting to know the internet in this collaborative environment. But fundamentally, most people will end up with a personal phone, like a mobile phone or a tablet of some kind, or a laptop, and you're really just shot out into this world as this little positively charged sovereign proton on your own. And so it is kind of this personal journey. So I think it's extremely important to understand the forces that are at play. So I'll just describe these forces as negatively charged plates. And the most obvious and by far the largest negatively charged plate is online corporations in the form of social media companies. And just quickly on magnetism, it's a negatively charged plate because opposite charges attract in magnetism. So this positive proton, which is your mind, is getting pulled in through magnetism or through subconsciously to this large attractive force. And this is very intentional on behalf of the social media companies, because within this resource growth value vector, where the result of this, of course, in the digital arena is the ads model. This is a very simple revenue model, because these corporations do not want to have a paywall. They don't want people to pay directly for these things, because that would reduce the amount of opportunity they have to expand their network, and which would reduce their network effects. To have the most amount of people participate in their network, they want to have no paywall, which means that they use this ads model, which is essentially just the ad companies pay them more for every additional amount of ads, which is linear to the amount of time that you spend looking at their platform, at their app. So it's a very simple thing. Their entire incentive structure is to maximize the amount of attention they take from every individual every day. And they have a massive amount of might behind them in the form of designers and developers, engineers, finance, lobbyists. Everything in this within this corporation is all focused on this. And again, it's not that any of these individuals or even the management team or the C-level people are ill-intentioned here. They just have, because of this embedded growth obligation along the resource growth value vector, it's expected by the shareholders, and anybody that invests in these things are expecting growth and are expecting this to get bigger and better every year along the resource growth value vector, which comes in the form of the ads model, which essentially just means that they need to mine more attention every day. So this is where this goes to, because the human mind is very much so attracted to our ape mind here is very much attracted to this negative information or or polarizing things that are controversial and garner some sort of emotional response that just makes you want to engage more. This really has nothing to do with pure signal online. It has only to do with attention seeking and ways to addict your mind to their platform. And this has obviously had many negative effects on our democracy and our civilization more broadly, but if we continue to go along this resource growth value vector, especially in this digital world, in this sense, then it seems like there's no easy off ramp in this existing direction. And I just wanted to make sure it was clear that there's a massive negatively charged plate here that is pulling your little sovereign proton brain in that direction. So this can arbitrarily be on one side, like this could be on the right side. So there's a large, as you leave the proton cannon, you're really getting sucked in quite significantly to this plate. Also, arbitrarily, or maybe on the other side, on the left side, there is a much smaller plate in terms of the attractive force. And it is all of the signal of all of time and space in humanity's history. It has all the information from every thought leader, every innovator, every politician, and all socioeconomics and physics and engineering and biology and chemistry and history and art and just everything. And more even like miraculously in this modern era, we have these new long form podcasts which distills the lessons of human beings that have learned lessons over their entire lifetime, over many decades. All this, and they distill the lessons down into a 2 or 3 or 4 hour podcast, which of course can be played at 2x or whatever. So you can get this information of all the lessons of this individual in about 2 hours. This technology and this ability to access that much signal of real world wisdom coming from these people. And then of course, the people from history and their ideas and all of the results of this growth in our technological and revolution is just truly miraculous. And this is all there. It's all internet, but the attractive force to this thing is just very small because the ads model and the business model to attract minds to this thing is not very great. And the reason I bring this all up is because as we think about the organizational structure of the future, which will be extremely digital, well, a huge part of this will be digital. We have to think about the existing forces that are at play, and you really need to have this emergent attractor plate that is a far greater force even still than all the others, and it can't be forced upon people, and you obviously can't use this resource growth value vector which ends up in the ads model. You need to have this new attractive force for other reasons, whether that's building community or building or innovation or ability to earn value or just people that are really excited about the future. Then you just have to build this in a way that is sustainable and resilient and just this beautiful attractive force that people want to go, and it needs to emerge naturally. So this is the main attractor that needs to be built here, especially in this digital world, as our little protons are shot out here. It's arbitrary which direction these protons go in, it is even miraculous. Like there's some force right now that is for people that want to learn, that are hyper curious. The opportunity to learn all the world's information for pretty much zero marginal cost is there, and I'm unsure exactly what this force is for those types of people, but it can't just be for the hyper curious. It has to be for the medium individual in civilization to just be naturally drawn to an attractive force that has a positive outcome on humanity and not an net negative outcome for humanity. Point number 2. This is always a controversial thing, but I think it really does we need to have an honest conversation about this. I'll just try to have a very brief dive into it right now. But this is classical economic and political theories. What we have to be very aware of as we create these organizational structures of our future is history. We need to, as we think about this, we have all this information at our fingertips again, and we know every single model and every single idea structure and every single power and control and economic and governance structure that has been tried in the past and the results of these things. And so while we must be extremely aware of what has worked and what has not worked in the past and the effects that it had on civilization, this is also can be a significant trap for us, because it's always easy to then therefore look at the past and then project that into the future and try to use the same tools that were designed in the past in the future. But what is missing here is so significantly insufficient is because the future, the environmental, the civilizational environment is so much different as we move forward in this century and beyond than all previous times, and it's changing at an exponential rate that any previous organizational structure that did not have the operating environment that we're currently in and entering into is just insufficient. And this is a good thing in many ways, because clearly there has been no great massive model of success here. There's been many fits and starts of good things, but in one way or another, it's had many, many drawbacks. And we must be very clear about what's changed in our organizational structure, our organizational operating system, and organizational environment, such that we can design the organizational structures of our future to be compatible with this. And there's a lot at stake here, because, as I've mentioned previously, the organizational structures that were designed centuries ago were not designed with this environment in mind, this connected global world and this exponential tech and this our relationship within with Earth and the effect that we have in this Anthropocene age. So we must just keep this very much in mind when we're thinking about the organizational structures of our future. And just to we'll just kind of briefly dip the toes in here to the current political thing, which I call it kind of the pull between the right and the left, which honestly is just it's the wrong question to ask here. But just to kind of provide a little bit of thought on the situation is it's interesting, and I mean it's understandable the conversations that are had primarily today within this current capitalist and the political governance structure, that you have the most common conversation is just this at kind of a high level is just this the fight between two negative outcomes. So it's kind of two trade-offs. And there's neither one is a good option. And there's always, and the people that are on the other side, they always say that they talk about the negative things from the other side, and then vice versa. But there is a third option here as well, which I'll talk about. But just first here, of course you have within this classic capitalist situation that we're in right now. You have the more fiscally conservative side of things, where people want to write the balance sheet and have a healthy economy, obviously, which makes sense. You need something like this for long-term sustainability of the organizational structure. But then this, of course, hurts the median individual within this organizational structure, because there's less social systems that are helping prop these people up. So the people that are very successful within the system do disproportionately well, and the people that are not successful within this thing do disproportionately poor. And so by pulling back on the spending and the social programs, and you're able to write the balance sheet, but it does hurt the social programs in some way, obviously. And nobody, once it's been there, it's very difficult to take it away. So then, of course, you have the inverse of this on the other side of things, which is more fiscally irresponsible and these people really want to prop up the social side of things and to be. But what happens here in our current resource growth value vector that's no longer sufficient is that you spend more than you earn. And so you get into this very financially irresponsible place where you have these, especially over the last decade, you have this massively increasing debts, and just the servicing this debt just becomes unsustainable in the long term. And where my mind goes here, and I'm just always so shocked that this is not a thing that's talked about more, is instead of having these two negative trade-off options, there is a third option. And this is like I use this like it's an orthogonal thing. You have like the two negatives on the one plane, but you can go in a new plane, in a new vector here. There is a third option, and this is simply this is a few things. This is what I've kind of been talking about. But first off, obviously this whole system that we're in right now worked over the past couple of centuries during this massive growth, this resource growth time and geographic growth time. So you had, when we were valuing this resource growth value vector, and we were expanding around Earth geographically, and we were expanding demographically with population, resource growth was a reasonable thing. So you could have this embedded growth obligation, which was needed to fuel this growth. But of course, now that those things are all plateauing, this resource growth value vector is no longer appropriate. So it's not this like economics no longer work out on this thing. Then you just get in this place where it's just like this trade-off between two negatives. But if you take this third orthogonal plane, this third orthogonal vector, and you can pursue new value vectors like in new directions, you can get the best of both worlds. You can create this sustainable, like this fiscally sustainable place where you're earning more than you spend, and you are and you're fiscally sustainable, but you're also able to help the people, like have everybody have a very healthy lifestyle and this ability to thrive, and this like the median person and most people or all people within this civilization or this organization are able to have a great opportunities and this great lifestyle and this great ability to thrive on planet Earth, which this is a fundamental thing. I think no matter what side of this current political situation you're in, like everyone should want to be able to thrive and enjoy life and be free to enjoy time with their friends and family and explore this beautiful world that we live in. But to do this, you do need competition. But competition along the current resource growth value vector is obviously insufficient and is failing for obvious reasons, like I've discussed. So those that are, just a quickly thing on those that want to be more fiscally irresponsible right now in the current resource growth value vector, that where that kind of goes is like you're having, as we increasingly enter this technological productivity era on planet Earth, we move from biological productivity, 100% biological productivity and zero technological, to the inverse of that. This has been the case since the Industrial Revolution. Arguably since the plow and the agricultural revolution, but more obvious and on a more of an exponential curve since the Industrial Revolution. And a capitalist in this situation, of course, is always incentivized to innovate on and be more efficient, such that they can sell their product more cheaply on the open marketplace, and they'll be more successful in this thing because the little profit piece on every unit they sell, and this unit growth, and this resource growth value vector. So that's been the incentive structure. And of course, as they get more efficient, which technically just means that you're applying more technological productivity, the percentage of technological productivity is then pushing out the biological productivity of humans, then you just can continue to offset like humans do less and less within this organizational structure. But in the beginning, it starts obviously on the like production lines and the physical side of things, but now obviously with these more advanced neural nets, these more advanced digital neural networks, even the cognitive capacity of humans through management and innovation and even creativity and stuff will just be more and more offset by the digital productivity side. So where this goes, if you stay in this organizational structure, you get these kind of more behemoth spires of power and wealth in the corporate structure. And then obviously, if you're trying to then have this more social situation, then it's just like this strange place, because you have this massive amount of power and control in the corporate structure, which was not a structure that was meant to really, which will have all the power, that will be the power and control within that organizational structure, because they're the ones doing all the things, all the productive stuff with the technological productivity. and it fundamentally just this organizational structure was not meant to lead civilization. So there's a lot of dangers in leaving it this way. But then if you're trying to be social in this thing and helping everybody without like just through this like redistribution thing, then you just like tax this corporate thing, or these massive corporate spires, and then goes through the government and then it redistributes it. The wealth, but just the whole thing is that's very unclear how that would work sustainably and really have the sum of the net potential and the sum of the happiness and the freedom and the ability for the individuals within the organizational structure to thrive seems very unclear, and it seems like it's unlikely to be very successful. You need to enter this new organizational structure and maintain competition here, but not along the resource growth value vector, because like I've said many times now, this is increasingly harmful both to our minds and to the ads model within the digital arena, and then to our environment and just like overall infrastructure around the world in our physical arena. And so this is what cultures really are trying to bring to light here, and this is where another reason where the cultures stem from is taking this orthogonal vector that you can really get the best of both of these things, and just reduce, like eliminate the middlemen here, and just still have this ability for like this massive competition thing, but incentivize things that have positive outcomes for humanity along, say, sustainability and resilience and usefulness and utility and other value vectors, not just resource growth. And then you kind of still get into this thing where you have like then it's just not a competition. It's not this fight between two negatives. Then there's just this positive thing that we can work towards, that you can get the best of both, so that you have this competition, so people can still do better than others, which is a requirement to be sustainable in a competitive sense. And that's how you really make progress here, because when you eliminate competition, again, we're competitive animals, and if you do not have competition, then that is where we don't cross this threshold into this next evolution for humanity, where we can be fully sustainable and fully resilient, and bring humanity up to the next level where we can focus on the next set of things. But so you do need competition, but it needs to be in an organizational structure that has a new value vectors and a new incentive structures within to get there. So this is another huge thing for cultures, and why I think that is very important to be discussing this, cultures or something like that at this time. So we must be aware. To sum up, we need to be aware of the history and political and governance and economic theories and systems of the past, and really be aware and cognizant of how those worked and how they didn't work, and the repercussions of all these things. But just simply leaning on that and relying on those structures and of the past to then project that into the future is just insufficient. So we need to be very aware of where we're heading, and then design the organizational structures and the incentive structures within these things to build a future that maximizes the happiness, the freedom, and the autonomy, and the ability for not just the few, but the many in civilization to thrive into the future. Third point, blockchain. I keep bringing this up, but it's not really, I'm not positive or negative about blockchains, but I do think that they have brought in many things to the table that I think are important to talk about as we think about the organizational structures of our future. And one thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is just, if you think about a lot of really like significant thought leaders here continue to bring up blockchains, and that they'll be some sort of cornerstone of the organizational structures of the future. And it's really just got me thinking about what are the draws to blockchain, and really then do what is it doing? What are blockchains doing? And then do a physics analysis of this whole architecture, and what are the bits and the atoms and are doing? How are they aligned? How are they constructed? And why is the alignment of these bits and atoms and the construction of these things, do they have to be put in that way to get the benefits of, or whatever the benefits and the attractors are to blockchain? And so I'll just discuss the three primary attractors to blockchain that I can kind of that makes sense to me of why people are drawn to this thing. And then we'll wrap around in the end just to do the physics analysis of do the bits and the atoms have to be organized in this way to achieve those three attractors. So the first attractor, the first attractive force to blockchains, which I've discussed already, is simply the humanity's showing humanity's willingness to pursue new value vectors. So in this case, this new value vector, of course, is a distributed compute operators, distributed compute operating systems. And so you don't have to ask the quote unquote leadership for these things where the value vector is, because you can just look transparently, where is that token, the newly minted token going? And the newly minted token going in blockchains is going to the distributed compute operators. So it's very clear where that value vector is. So great, that's a new value vector for humanity, and people bring their time, ideas, and resources to this thing, and that token then increases in value, and that increases the incentive structure then for people to participate in this new value vector, and so on. And now we're here. Number two, which I think is the far greatest attractive force to blockchains that people discuss at a high level, but not really the root of this thing, is simply the digital token that is associated with blockchains, and it's the digital tradable token more specifically. And what this enables and what this has done is it's brought this massive wave of interest to these blockchains with people that are in this wave that are they really do not care one way or another at all about the value vector, the distributed compute value vector that blockchains brought to the table, but they just simply want to earn money, which is fine. That's wonderful. That's a very inherited human nature thing to do. And by having this digital tradable token and the volatility in this thing, there was a lot of opportunity for people that just want to make money to participate and be interested in this whole thing. And this, combined with social media, of course, it just made this massive cyclone of hype and things around blockchain. I think this is the primary driver to people to be interested in this thing. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we just have to be honest about this attractive force and just say and be able to be honest that this was one of the main drivers to this thing for people that really didn't care about the value vector. But this was a very successful attractive force to bring people into this new value vector, even if they did not care about the value vector itself. Point number three, which is actually the reason why I wanted to discuss this, is because I've been thinking about this most lately, because again, a lot of the thought leaders that are thinking about these organizational structures of the future, they continue to bring up blockchains as some sort of fundamental cornerstone of the organizational structures of our future, which I kind of think is fascinating and just really curious as to why is this the case. And I think said in between the lines here quite often is just this new. It's just that blockchains represent this new organizational structure that does not come with the baggage, does not come with the constraints of all incumbent organizational structures. So you can really do whatever you want here. And there's this very massive, understandable lack of trust against centrally owned organizational structures. So this creates this new ownerless organizational structure, and then there's new ways of distributing the wealth and the power among these things, and they just can take any shape and form, and which is a great demonstration. And this new organizational structure just provides a blank canvas for thought leaders and for people of all kinds to try to shape these organizational structures into something that'll be useful in the future, which I think is amazing. But again, now just bringing this back to all three of these points: new value vectors, ability to make money through the digital token trading, and with this new organizational structure with no incumbent constraints. Do the atoms and the bits of the actual blockchain, which is just this distributed compute architecture, do they have to be aligned in this way? Do the atoms have to be in distributed GPUs around the world that are owned privately and by corporations? Do the bits have to be aligned in this distributed compute operating system that is seated on all of these distributed compute hardware? Again, what cultures are trying to say here, what I'm trying to say is that that arguably that the answer is no there. Like you can you can achieve these three attractive forces without the having to do it through this distributed compute architecture. Because as I've said this before, like we have such hard problems to solve in so many facets around around all in all spectrums here, that we really want to make sure that we keep the easy things easy so that we can focus all of our efforts on the hard things. And adding this distributed compute constraint from the get-go here really adds a whole bunch, at least an order or two of magnitude of inefficiency, or more than of inefficiency and complexity to just the compute side of things. And this digital compute side of things is a significant foundation for the organizational structures of our future. And there are many organizational structures of the future that are there's lots at play here. There's many other competing organizational structures that we have to be aware of. And so we want to do everything we can to increase the probability of success of these new organizational structures, ones that are actually designed for this future world. Then we just want to do everything we can to increase the efficiency of these things. And so both the efficiency and reduce the complexity. So you really want to, on the software side, you want thinking about software development for a quick second. In the late 80s or early 90s, there was this introduction of object-oriented programming, which really was just made the whole programming environment a far more accessible and efficient for developers. And this brought in this new wave of development innovation, because you could achieve the same things more efficiently and way more, just higher efficiency, and it was just more accessible to more developers. So you had this exponentially increasing development in software, the very extremely powerful software. And so by doing this object-oriented architecture, this was a big enabler of this. And so when you bring this into today, we want to do everything we can to increase the accessibility and reduce the complexity, to bring more people in to solve to solve more hard problems without adding complexity. And having this distributed compute operating system in this whole consensus thing, it just adds a whole bunch of complexity, and it just really reduces the efficiency quite significantly. So we just have to ask ourselves again, is this what we want, as we think about the organizational structure of the future? Is this what we have to be honest, this is the kind of as we get going out of the gate here, what is our foundation that we want to be standing on, and how can we do everything we possibly can? How can we align the bits and the atoms to do everything we possibly can to increase the probability of success? Point number 4. This kind of taps into the last couple of threads that I was discussing as well. As we think about this future organizational structure and solving these really hard problems, and being able to have this third direction that is not a sacrifice between two negative things, like the choice between two negative options, but you have another choice that is just, you can get the best of both worlds, which of course you need these new value vectors, you need this new organizational structure, and these new incentive structures. But also on top of this, for cultures that are successful here and to be a big attractive force, I think a huge thing here, I think this is underappreciated sometimes, is definitely underappreciated, because the attention and the effort and the technical and innovation capacity is not on these things. But you really to get to this place and it's really this free and this exciting and this future of excitement and ability for people to thrive to the maximum in the future here. What I think culture Earth anyways will do in the beginning is focusing on the pillars of civilization, the pillars of survival, and getting those down to get to zero marginal cost and be sustainable and resilient. And this just sets the foundation. And of course, on top of that foundation, once we get to that point, then we can focus on other things. And of course, not everything will be zero marginal cost, and there's still competition, but at least everybody has this ability to thrive, and everybody can raise their families, and everybody can know they have food and water and all these things, and connectivity and the ability to learn and all these things, which is just the direction that we're going right now is the opposite of these things. So what really needs to happen is we need to be able to innovate very quickly and focused on what this, like through the lens of physics here, how can you do this most efficiently, and where can you align this incentive structure, what problems need to be focused on here to get there. And so I hate to go back to the tunnels thing again, always back to the tunnels, but this is actually surprisingly quite a significant role. They do play quite a significant role here, in the sense that I've already talked about the underground energy nervous system. So you'd have high voltage aluminum or copper lines, like very high voltage, to be the subterranean energy nervous system for civilization. Critical. Could be zero marginal cost, as you get renewable electricity that's powered directly from the infinite power of the sun. But there's actually two, to get this in the most efficient way, I think you'd have two other parallel lines. So you'd have three parallel tunnels total. Here, I think you can this solves the zero marginal cost pillars of civilization that is sustainable and resilient in the most efficient way, with least amount of atoms that need to be transferred and electrons that need to be transferred. So I've talked about the energy underground nervous system. Next to that is water, and water is like, there's no scarcity of water on planet Earth. We have, like, Earth deserves to be called water. I think something like 70% of the surface area of Earth is water, mostly, of course, in like saltwater form in the oceans. But when you have unlimited renewable energy, then you can just take that energy to the coastlines and have like massive distilleries here to distill the water into fresh water. And then you can have multiple massive holding tanks throughout the continent and water is pumped, of course, with the renewable electricity to these holding tanks and distributed to all areas of civilization for zero marginal cost as well. And you have orders and orders of magnitude more water in the oceans than you will ever need for civilization. So you essentially have unlimited, zero marginal cost energy and water. And this water, of course, can be used then to grow food, and this water can be used for this like outdoor, beautiful biological ecosystems that we can develop, and it can be used for just personal consumption, of course. But again, you need to be able to distribute this for zero marginal cost and very resilient and sustainable, and for very cheap. So the subterranean tunnel thing makes the most amount of sense here. But this tunnel needs to be like dirt cheap, like very, very, very cheap to obtain this. Okay, and then the third tunnel in parallel with these other two would be a fiber, like fiber optic cables for communication. And I think it seems clear that you'd have there in the future, there will be quite a bit of momentum towards the satellite internet constellations, mega constellations, which is great. You want redundancy in these things, and that, I think there's a lot of benefits to that as well. And I mean, people have all sorts of takes on that, but that's great to have redundancy. But you do, like, having the subterranean lines that are in the subterranean manner, that is more efficient to go, like, have light pulses through these fiber cables and direct in the subterranean way. Because if it's, again, subterranean, just like the other tunnels, like, the benefits are increased resiliency because you're immune to any surface conflict or surface weather or anything that's going on the surface, or electromagnetic pulses. And when you think about this underground fiber optic cables that's connecting essentially the mines of planet Earth and the databases of planet Earth, then the analogy I have is this brain Earth is analogous to your own mind. And within your own mind, you have neurons that are connected neurons that are connected with axons. And you have this little action potentials between the synapses on the neurons. So essentially you just have this web of connected neurons, and these pulses going between them and with the axons. And then when you think about this global Earth thing, it's your each individual brain on planet Earth is a neuron in this analogy, and the connection between them, which is the fiber link or the satellite internet link, is the axon that's connecting these two things. And what will likely change, or what has been changing, and it seems like this is the trajectory things are going to keep going. People, of course, will be able to opt in or out of this thing, but the bandwidth of information between the mind and the fiber, between the mind and other minds and databases around planet Earth, the bandwidth at the interface between the brain and the conduit between other brains and databases is increasing. So right now we're kind of at this rudimentary thing where the output bandwidth is very low. You just have like your thumbs and fingers mainly for texting and stuff like that, and writing, and then maybe some voice stuff, but it's very low bandwidth. And then maybe an order of magnitude or two above that is the input bandwidth, which is you take in videos and images and text and audio into your mind. And what's a little bit like what will likely change here is we'll have more, like the bandwidth will just increase, and where this likely kind of goes is towards some sort of brain machine interface where this expands quite significantly. And the extent to how much this happens is definitely up for debate, but this likely is where things are going over in time here. So what you really want in this whole situation then, if that is the case, is you really do need this interconnectivity fibers to be very resilient and permissionless, of course, and cheap and with low latency and all of these things. So that's why I think there's a massive important, like having this fiber optic cables, but to connect the minds and the databases of planet Earth is super important as well. Yeah. So now when you think about the pillar, let's just quickly review the pillars of civilization that we need to get to zero marginal cost to kind of have this foundational layer of like a healthy, sustainable, equal like ability for people to thrive and enjoy life in. Is you do need so you have food and water, you have energy, you have movement, you have communication, and you have shelter. So if we just kind of go on the food and water thing, so of course we have water through this zero marginal cost ability to distill water from the oceans and then pump it to every region. And then on the food side of things, this gets pretty awesome too, because you can use the inputs of the unlimited energy and water to then build 3D vertical farms. And this, you would likely apply this brain earth, like on the next round of Halo innovation thing, you would probably apply this to these 3D vertical farms, and probably also to the shoreline, like ocean shoreline, like mega distilleries to maximize efficiency and all that stuff of those things. But for the indoor food thing, you could really put a lot of innovation here in engineering, just significant. First off, you want the indoor thing is required because then you can create any sort of environment you want in there, any sort of humidity or any temperature, any carbon dioxide level, because you can take this unlimited energy and water to create those environmental conditions. And you can, because we have this abundance of CO2 in the atmosphere that we actually want to kind of get rid of, you can use the energy to capture that and then inject that into the atmosphere, the different environments within this building to grow anything you want in any region around planet Earth at any time of the year, all the time. So this is, of course, like the CO2 that's captured would be kind of negligible on the global scale, but it's going the right direction, and you need that anyways for plants to grow more. Like plants love CO2 to grow, to thrive. So, and because you don't really have any people in this thing, it would all be automated with the digital motors and digital brain. Then you can have any ppm concentration that you want, and yeah, you could have many different environments within this 3D farm. And you want to go 3D because the productive efficiency of like the plot of land increases linearly with every level. So instead of having this 2D square thing on the ground, which has been the case for all of time up until recently, now you can just go up. So every additional layer is like you just multiply linearly with the output of this thing. So 2 layers is double output, 3 layers triple output, and you go to 15 layers, 20 layers, arbitrarily high to. Then you just keep that productivity, that land plot just goes, like very or linearly extremely high, and you can be as big, as taller and as wide and long as you want it, depending on the size of the community or the region that you're trying to provide food for. And because the inputs of this thing are zero marginal cost, and you can operate this thing with this digital brain and digital motors, then the food also gets to be zero marginal cost, and the food can be. This whole thing can be extremely plant dense, extremely organically dense, and you can have like the digital vision and sensors and everything, and monitored by the digital brain can be monitoring all the environmental things within this to be very sustainable and resilient. Like you can do like focus on soil health quite a bit, and like the productivity of every cubic meter or whatever soil will be very high, and we can innovate on the fertilizer types to push past where we're at these days with nitrogen, or the whole current fertilizer situation. Which is not very sustainable but useful. But we can innovate past this if we apply this brain earth and other just hardcore innovation and engineering on this thing. And then you can also have the exact most efficient amount of water and concentration of CO2 and moisture in the soil, and harvest it at exactly the right time. Harvest this autonomously, process the food through put the meals together or together autonomously and distribute this autonomously with autonomous electric vehicles and drones. And just have this whole food ecosystem that is resilient to all weather conditions and to any region around the earth with this unlimited water and energy supply. And then what's kind of cool here is cultures that are trying to solve this seriously could then have a token incentive stream, some percentage of the token incentive stream going toward culinary artists. There are people that are so wonderful, so amazing at this. They can create, just with plants, they can create this beautiful, amazing tasting food that people love to eat. And again, build what you love, don't destroy what you hate. It's people don't have to have plants. It's obviously far more efficient, but instead of forcing anything, just make this so good, because it can be, especially if we have innovation and incentive streams here, that people should want to love to have this food and leave the existing food supply system to enjoy this food. For it's cheaper, it's better, it's delivered to you, it's sustainable, it's healthy, and you can iterate on the deliciousness and the healthiness of this food and have people and incentive structures to really get there. So that's just an extremely exciting one. So that is food. So pillars of civilization, food and water. Yes, you can do this zero marginal cost. Energy, check. Then movement, you can use, of course, this renewable energy to power terrestrial, ground level vehicles, and you can then also do electric autonomous aviation and shipping. Then you have communication as well through this fiber link, and that leaves us with shelter. Shelter is just this mind-blowingly exciting. I think the potential for innovation here is ginormous, because anybody that has built a house in our current organizational structure knows that the amount of waste products and that go into this thing is crazy. The packaging materials of the stuff, and then the materials within the packaging itself, and then just the different combinations of technology here. For whatever reason, I've never it's just this catastrophe of technology that has all kind of smashed together that is not really built for hanging out together, and just making this stuff with sticks and concrete, and then boring holes in the stuff and shoving wires through and cables and pipes through, and this whole ordeal, and taking so long and so expensive and so unsustainable. It just is just nonsense. And of course, in our current resource growth value vector, where it's always the sacrifice, when you go back to the sacrifice between the two negatives, not the third orthogonal thing of you want to innovate past this. It's not the resource group value vector right now, of course, is just to throw more money at this problem. But again, it's not a money problem. If you just throw money at this problem, you just exacerbate this problem. There's no incentive structure for innovators, engineers, and constructors and suppliers to solve this problem. And so you just get more expensive and expensive houses. The net, it's a diminishing returns on your capital investment. And then of course on the other side of that, the sacrificial thing, the two sacrificial options is then it's just to not build anything. You can have both. You can have shelters and sustainable and affordable. You need to innovate. And the potential here within a new organizational structure is massive. The code book within this current organizational structure, the building code, you just can't innovate at the scale that you need to innovate. And as you kind of listen to me in the next couple of minutes, we need to innovate at a massive magnitude to solve this problem. And so here we go. Taking a physics analysis of solving these solving the zero marginal cost, pillars of civilization, pillars of survival in a sustainable and resilient way. Again, you want to minimize the amount of atoms and electrons that need to be transferred to achieve all of these things, to maximize your efficiency. and your resilience and all these things. But so we must ask ourselves, how do we solve this shelter thing with these three input streams: fiber, communication for information, water, and energy. And so this is gonna sound nutty, but we need to go these places and try these things and put the incentive structure in these things to get to solve these problems, and actually solve these problems, and have the opportunity. Like, success is one of the possible outcomes here of solving all these things. Then what you could do is you can if you use those indoor vertical farms to create some sort of organic material, and maybe we need to innovate on the molecular structure or plant types or whatever, but to create an organic material that can be used as a primary feedstock for the materials of the shelter, then you can really close the loop on this sustainability and the thing. And this is going to sound crazy, but what you could do potentially, if we can solve this problem, we can solve this problem if we just, this is where the incentive structure is, and applying this very bright minds on this problem, and have the competitive nature of human beings to get after these things. Then this is a fun one for botanists too, because the potential here is just so crazy that you could just have this whole new shelter architecture for humanity. But if we can create this organic material that you can grow within these 3D vertical farms, and you'd harvest it, and you probably would need to treat it in some way, or heat or dry it, and then obviously compress it or whatever, and then put it into these panel things, like these wall panels that are all in one panel that's water resistant and has high thermal insulation and high R values, and is very structurally sound. It'd be these arched kind of panels thing, and it would be all in one panel. And within this panel, you'd have this utility channel that runs along horizontally, at least along the perimeter of the wall sections, and that would have the three inputs to the community. Same thing: fiber for connectivity to the world, water and energy. And these panels, this is kind of a cool mathematical geometrical problem as well, because you want to reduce the complexity of manufacturing, so you would only want to have a small amount of templates of panel styles, but you don't want to have this same igloo style lame house or whatever for all of humanity. That's very boring, and I don't think that's a future we want. We want to be creative and have fun here. But so if you have maybe 10 or 20 styles of panels and you solve this geometric problem, you can have infinite designs from this, which is that's a really a really exciting thing to do. And so by having infinite designs and from a small amount of panels, you can just create this shelter for zero marginal cost, because input streams to this thing is also zero marginal cost. So the house thing just goes down significantly, the house costs. But you need to innovate on all of these things, and it has to be resilient, it has to be sustainable, it has to be water resistant and resistant to slow loads and all these things. And the materials within the house too, just think about building up all the infrastructure within the house with this organic material, whether that's counters and cabinets and sinks and showers and baths and chairs and bed frames and all that stuff. We can do this, but we need to innovate heavily in this direction to get there. And just one last thing on the housing thing, which I'll just quickly this is so gears just get going so fast on this, because you could do if you want a very cool lighting thing, you'd have LED strips that are attached to the ceiling, and then it's the top of the light is just somewhat proud of the surface of the ceiling, it's somewhat below, and so it can beam the light up towards the ceiling, such that you have this indirect glow, this beautiful, and because of the arched nature of the ceilings and the building, the light propagates beautifully in this indirect way to have this beautiful glow. And because it's LED, it's efficient. It's you can change the hue, the brightness. It can be a warm, beautiful, cozy feeling. It could be this daylight the hue. It can be very any color. And as long as one edge of that strip crosses over the utility channel around the perimeter, then you can inject the DC electricity into this thing to power the lights. And then you probably would have one cornerstone panel that connects to the utilities coming in from underground, and that would have some sort of embedded heat pump where you could condition the water and the air, and you can just have this very beautiful environment for your family. And this is the main thing I'm trying to say here is we need all these technologies. We need to apply hardcore innovation and competition to solve these things, such that like we need this people that obviously, because it's this competitive thing, you'll have people that earn way more tokens than others. So people can have not just a typical, so they can keep going and make this crazy things. But what you want to do is get the median person, and actually all individuals within this organizational structure, to have this ability to have this amazing place, this amazing environment and civilization to live in, which of course shelter is a huge part of that as well. But you should not be indebted to this shelter your whole life. It should be very, very cheap, so that can either be given to you for free or whatever, or you can buy it for some very low amount of tokens, so that everyone within the civilization can enjoy this, everyone within the organizational structure can enjoy this. And like right now we have this crazy housing prices in crisis, like because which is because of this middleman thing and the bank thing and the mortgage thing. The incentive structure is just spiraling this all out of control. But again, write the organizational structure and your incentive structure, and you can solve this problem. And the house thing is important because, and all of these things really, to get the pillars of civilization so that you can just support life for zero marginal cost. Because people, like wonderful people these days that have full capacity to raise children, do not want to have families because they simply cannot afford it. Like housing, like shelter is too expensive, and utilities are too expensive, and movement is too expensive. That's crazy. We can do this. We can innovate past this. We just need to write our organizational structure, and we go on this orthogonal vector that is not the choice between two sacrifices, but we can solve, but through a new organizational structure, new value vectors with new incentive structures, we can solve these problems and really create a beautiful place for humanity where it gives everybody the ability to thrive and enjoy this beautiful world that we live in, and create some sort of symbiotic, healthy relationship with the world and all life within it. I should probably stop there. Let's do this.